It's none of your business what other people think of you. You can't change it, and it doesn't matter. And I realized what they're speaking is their truth. It's not yours. Only you know what that is. Hey there, and welcome back into the Direct Selling Accelerator podcast. I'm your host, Sam Hind, and I want to talk to you today about something a little bit more personal. And I think this is going to be as personal for you as it is for me. And it's the importance of showing up and being courageous to run your business. The thing is that when we start a business for the first time, we step into something that's the unknown, into a challenge that we face that will come up against adversity. And as we do that, many of us put to the side the most important thing. And that is that it's actually not about the product. It's not about the business. It's not about even the service that you provide. Whilst all of those things are truly important, it's about the you that comes to the table. Because when we run a business, we are doing business with ourselves. We're selling ourselves. People are connecting with us. And one of the things that I hear from people most often, and in fact, only minutes before I went live to record this episode for you, I had yet another message from somebody saying, I'm afraid to show up. I'm afraid of what people will think. I have listened to what other people say about me and it scares me. And I just want to throw it out there. I don't care who you're watching. I don't care how successful another person, particularly women in business, appear to be. Everybody who is successful goes through this challenge on a daily basis. And I want to talk you through some of those challenges, but I also hope that this episode today breathes a little courage into you. We're going to make this one short and shiny, but I want to share with you today a little of my journey and help you step into all that you are meant to be, because it's no accident you're in the business that you're in right now. So let's get stuck in. Now, as we go into business and as we enter into the world of trying to pave our own way in this space, we have to remember a few very important things. And that is what I've already mentioned. People are not buying your product, the business that you're in. They're not buying the services you provide, at least not yet. What they are in fact buying is you. People do business with those they like, know, and trust. The challenge we have is that for many of us, we don't necessarily have enough self-belief to show up and grow that all-important trust. How many of you struggle with things like going live, sharing a story, telling people about your own journey? It's completely normal to struggle with these things. But you've got to remember, you're more than a product. You're more than a service, and you're more than a company. Those are the things that you offer to help provide value to the person at the other end. But at the end of the day, you're the thing that sets you apart, and you're what people are coming for. So I want to talk to you a little bit, first of all, about your business and your journey. The key I discovered over many years of struggling through this very process myself was understanding one key core thing, and it's this. I need to know, what is my why? Why do I do what I do? And what is it that I'm providing to the people that come into contact with me? You know, I narrowed this down over many years of working with some incredible coaches and mentors to one core word that for me was my why. I know that we've had the amazing Keith Abraham come onto this podcast a few times, and you may have heard of Keith before. He's a really great friend of ours and an incredible mentor. And one of the things that Keith talks about is this process of identifying your why. And he talks about asking yourself 7 times, why do I do what I do? Why am I in this business? And when you answer that question, ask it again. Why is that? Why does that matter to me? And then ask it again. And eventually you boil down to something that evokes true emotion in you. For me, when I first did this process, it was quite enlightening. It was a very emotional process. And like most people that do this properly, I ended up in tears realizing my business had nothing to do with social media. It had nothing to do with helping people learn how to do Facebook better for their business. Well, that's why they think they're coming to me initially. The reason that people are coming to me is because they connect. It's because they feel loved and they learn to love themselves. For me, it is so important that through everything that I do, I am leaving people feel more loved, both by me and the world around them, but also learning to love themselves. Why does that matter so much to me? Because it was a journey I also had to go through. Let me tell you, showing up and doing lives or speaking on a stage or training people was one of the hardest things I ever had to learn to do. It did not come naturally, but I was obedient to what I knew I had to step up and do and what people were looking to me for. Do you know, it's really funny when I think back to my childhood and I think about the things that people used to say about me. We are so good at listening to the negative words that come out of people's mouths and allowing that to form an identity for us. When I was a young kid, one of the things I loved to do was play schools with my friends and my sisters. I loved to teach. I used to bring workbooks and sticker books with me everywhere and pens and paper. And I would gather all of my family friends together and my sisters, and I would try and teach them things. I would have them all sitting down with these workbooks and I give them lessons. I even went to the extent of getting secondhand blackboards and whiteboards and setting up a little schoolroom scenario. Unbeknown to me, of course, because I was just following something that I naturally was passionate about. My sisters and my friends did not want to be in school with me. And so I got labeled a lot with being bossy. And this was something I heard from people over and over and over again, from my parents, from family and friends. Sam is so bossy, always bossing people around. Now, as a kid and then going into my adult life, I saw this as a major, major negative. In fact, for many years, I squashed down that great desire I had to teach and empower people to be everything they were capable of being. Yet now when I look back on it, I realize something. While I came across as bossy, and sure, my approach probably wasn't the ideal, the thing that I was missing was this. I was naturally born to do something. I was naturally passionate about growing, teaching people, empowering people, helping them be the best that they could be. I always saw in people a version of themselves that they didn't see. I could always see the incredible capability that somebody had. And even now today, when someone comes to me and I can see a business in them, I can see leadership in them. It is so frustrating for me when I can see that they don't see it themselves. And no matter what I say, because they've had so many people speak this negativity into them, they just don't do it. They don't step into it because they don't believe that of themselves. Now, as I was growing up, of course, I thought this bossy nature of mine was something to squash because it was bad. How many things maybe were said about you as you were growing up? Things that people said about you that you perceived to be negatives that in actual fact are incredible qualities and skills that you were born into being. For me, I was born into being that leader that empowered other women, specifically women, people to help them step into all they could be in business and in life. I love doing this, and it is so important to me to be able to do this every single day through this podcast that you're listening to right now, through Facebook, through the training. If you are ever in any of our membership groups, you'll know that first and foremost, my focus is helping you step into being all that you are meant to be. Not just, here's the Facebook tools that you need to learn today. Because without the you, those things make no difference at all. You will have no impact on the world. And I care about the impact you're here to have today. And that's what I want to talk to you about in this episode. So as I grew up and I realized, Sam, you know what? You were put here to teach, but maybe not in the way that you thought. As I stepped into my business, initially I started a business that was a consulting agency. I used to run social media for people. The reason I did that was because I could see the power social media had to help people have their impact, help people to connect with more of their ideal customers. I could see the bridge that so many businesses were unable to establish that gap between ideal customer and the incredible service and product and business that they had over here. And I could see social media as this amazing bridge in the middle that would help them connect with those people. The problem was that over time, I realized something. When I was running social media for other people, I wasn't expressing them. I wasn't sharing them. I wasn't their passion. I wasn't their journey. I was simply talking about their product, their service, their business, and it wasn't right. And we see so many people doing this. They show up talking about the business first, the product first, the service first, when in actual fact, what has to come first is you. So what I decided to do was take a little step back, and I wanted to instead give people the knowledge I had so that they could show up on social media genuinely and authentically to grow that all important trust and relationship, knowing it was the only way it was going to work for small business owners. The problem with this was that so many people didn't see it the way that I did, and they didn't understand the value of that all important relationship. And so this became a core part of what Greg and I do as a business. How do we help people show up authentically and understand the value and importance of the relationship that they build and the trust that they form? Because once you establish that, particularly on social media, your business will go ahead in leaps and bounds. There will be no stopping it. The challenge we have is that when we feel that we aren't good enough to show up first, then the business suffers for it. And I learned this the hard way myself. Back when I was teaching workshops for the first time, I knew I was going to go online. This was probably about 8-9 years ago now. And I was really aware that my plan, my journey, my trajectory was I wanted to take training, this information, helping these business owners online through webinars. And I wanted to be able to reach people globally and have an impact. The trouble was that I wanted to be able to practice what I was doing on people in person first. I wanted to make sure that the impact I was having was actually getting results. And I wanted to be able to see firsthand that when people applied what I was teaching them, it was actually working. And naturally, it did. It worked incredibly. But what I did was I would sit in a room with around about 50 to 100 people at a time, and I would do a 5-week course for business owners wanting to learn more about social media. And guaranteed every time that I got to live training, which was where we taught people the importance of showing up on Facebook Live, you would have a portion of people that you could see would take a deep breath and sit back in their chair going, "That's not me." Those people, every time I saw this, were the ones that I knew would not get the results that they were capable of getting because they weren't showing up. Those are the people that thought what people wanted was their product, their service, or their business, not them. And they couldn't have been more wrong. Now, I remember one particular day I learned this lesson the hard way for myself. We'd gone through a transition in our business, and we decided to go from Sam Lee's Consulting, which was my original business name when I first set up, to Auxano. Now, the reason we did this was because I could see that there was a much bigger picture for what we were doing. And we had started bringing some team on board. Greg and I were beginning to work together, and we really wanted to make sure that we were growing a business that was much bigger than just one individual. And so we changed the business name to Auxano. Just in case you were curious, Auxano is actually a Greek biblical name, which means to cause, to grow, and become greater. And that for us was our core mission. It was what we were here to do, cause you to grow and become greater and have an impact on the world that way. So we started renaming the business. And as a process of doing this, we actually made the decision to completely restart all of our social media profiles. And I knew that we needed to grow our new Facebook page really quickly. So I committed to doing a live a day because I wanted to practice what I was preaching. I'm always a huge advocate for this. It's really important to show up the way that you're telling other people to. And so I decided to lead from the front. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, I don't love doing live. I don't love getting on stage and speaking at events, but what I do love is seeing the impact that I can help have by showing up and being courageous and doing those things. So I started doing lives and I was struggling. The reason I was struggling was because I felt people didn't want to see me. They didn't want to hear from me. Exactly what other people were telling me about them. And I was telling them that they were wrong, but I didn't believe it about myself. And so here I was feeling like a complete fraud, showing up, doing lives every day. For 30 days, I committed to doing this. I had my 30 tips I was going to share every day. It was no question what I was going to do. But showing up on camera felt so uncomfortable. So I showed up. I get to day 15. I haven't had a single comment on any of my lives. I understand the process. I know it takes some time. So I kept going. I get to day 20 and I'm now in a workshop with a group of people. I've got my 50 people in the room and I start talking about lives. And one woman from the back of the room pipes up and says, "But Sam, don't you think that people get sick of seeing your face on Facebook?" And the problem was not that this woman spoke her truth, it was that she spoke mine. It felt like a stab in the heart because she was saying exactly what I was already thinking about myself. And isn't it funny that we've got this negative bias? We are so programmed to hear the negative that we forget to listen to the positive. So, what did I choose to do? I listened to the one, not the many. I listened to the woman in the back of the room and I stopped going live. The biggest mistake I could have ever made. Within 30 days, my business inquiries had dropped off. The people who were doing business with me also stopped making calls, and I started to lose income at a rapid pace, and I couldn't work out what was going on. I had people who were no longer asking me questions. I contacted my business coach and I said, "What is going on?" And she said to me this one thing, and I'll tell you right now, I felt like somebody had slapped me across the face. And I saw in that moment how stupid I'd been. She looked at me and she said, "What are you doing?" She said, "Why did you stop showing up live?" And I said, "Because this woman made a comment that I think is true. People are sick of seeing my face on Facebook." And she went, "Okay, first of all, who was that woman? And is she your target customer?" And I realized something. I had allowed somebody who wasn't my target customer try to speak truth into my business. Now, I stopped and thought about this for a little moment. Who was this woman? Now, I know her fairly well, personally as well. It happened to be somebody who was no longer in business. She didn't even have a business anymore. She was simply fascinated by social media and wanted to learn a little bit more about it. She was a socialite, she was a little bit bored, and she decided to join the course. And then my coach said something else to me. "How many people were in that room that day?" 50, I said. She said, "And you listened to one? What did the other 49 think?" And I realized I hadn't even stopped to consider it. It didn't even occur to me to think about what the other 49 people in the room were thinking about what I was doing. It was only a couple of days after that I get a knock at the door, and it's the postman with a parcel. As I open the door, he goes, "Sam." And I went, "Well, yes, it's my name on the parcel." He said, "No, no, 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 no. I know you. You're Sam from Facebook." And I was like, "How do you know this?" He said, "Well, my wife has got a business, a party plan business, and she has been watching you on Facebook." He said, "I have never seen her be more confident in her business than she has been since she's been watching your Facebook Live tips." He said, "I've even been watching a few in the background." He said, "Some of that information has been just so game changing and helpful." He said, "Thank you so much, but where have you been? We love watching those lives and we haven't seen one." Now, the first thought in my head was, well, where were you when I was going live? You weren't commenting. And I realized, of course, what I tell you guys all the time, just because they're not interacting doesn't mean they're not watching. It doesn't mean you're not having an impact. Now, I realized something else at that point. The impact I'm having doesn't need to be about the many. It only ever has to be about the one. I was willing to listen to the one when it was negative. Why am I not listening to the one when it's positive? If what you're doing right now is changing one life, impacting one person, isn't that all you were ever meant to do? How amazing if it's more than one. A few years later, I started keynote speaking completely by accident. Believe me, it was not an intention. And I can tell you it was the scariest thing I ever did. But I actually got asked by, believe it or not, my business coach, who ended up, she became the owner of one of the biggest direct selling companies in Australia. It was now a conflict of interest for her to be my coach anymore, but she hired me and wanted me to teach her field, which was an incredible opportunity for me and an amazing experience. But this was someone who was willing to push me as far as I needed to be pushed because that's what I was here to do for other people too. And she asked me to come and speak at their event. Now, I can tell you I was petrified. I'm pretty sure I threw up multiple times before getting out there, not because I didn't know my stuff back to front, but because I was so afraid of what other people would think. Remember that negative bias that we all listen to so often? So I show up on stage, I do my presentation, and I'm told afterwards how impactful it was for so many people. But what do we continue to listen to? It's always the negative. Why? Because usually the negative we listen to speaks a truth that we're already thinking about ourselves. When you step into your business, you have to be very mindful of something. Your commitment to what you're doing is going to be tested. You will come up against adversity, but you've got to remember something very important. And this is something I have to remind myself of every single day. This is your journey and nobody else's. It's actually no one else's job to believe in you but yours. However, I did learn something really valuable early on, and I'm so grateful to have had such incredible people around me naturally. But something you have to do consciously, especially as you continue through business, is to surround yourself always by people who believe in you more than you believe in yourself at times. There have been many times where I can tell you I've wanted to throw the towel in. I have been so scared, so challenged, or come up with against so much adversity that I've thought to myself, I should just stop now. It has not always been easy. In fact, I don't think there is a day in business where Greg and I could walk away and go, well, that was an easy day. There's always a challenge. There's always something that we're battling through. But what we know so much more than anything else is the conviction that we're here for a mission and a purpose. And even in those moments where I stop and go, oh, I should just go back and get a job. I should just throw it all in now. This is all too hard. I always stop and I know within myself that it is not about me. It is so much more important what I'm here to do right now that I couldn't quit if I wanted to, because I'm here to impact other people and you are too. I want you to get super clear on what that why is and why you do what you do. Because when you are convinced and you are sold out for the mission that you're here to achieve, whatever that might be, it may be simply showing your kids that they're worth it. It may be that you're here to speak courage into other people who are your customers and your team. It may be that you're here to help people live healthier lives. Whatever that is for you, and I guarantee you there's something important you're here to do. It is only your path and your journey. But the only person who is responsible for showing up for that is you. And I really want to encourage you right now, when people are speaking negative things into you, and often those negative things, can I tell you, come from the people closest to you. I don't have the most incredibly supportive family. In fact, my family over the years have probably been the toughest people for me to run a business around. They haven't supported what I've done. They have had lots of negative things to say about how busy I am and what I do and why do I do it. But it's not their journey. It's not their pathway. And maybe one day they'll come to see the impact that we're having. But it doesn't matter if they don't. Because what we're here to do is achieve our mission, my mission, which is to help you feel more loved and mostly show you how incredible you are in getting you to step into all that you are capable of being. Now, when I started keynote speaking, there was a particular day I remember ringing this coach who ended up not being my coach. She's now just a really, really special friend, and I still get the honor and privilege of working with her from time to time. But I happened to be backstage at an event I was going to be speaking for, a direct selling company that had hired me to come and speak to 300 of their top leaders. It was probably about the third keynote speaking event I'd done. I had my content down pat. I knew exactly what I was going to say. But as I stood there backstage, I started shaking. I felt sick. I felt so uncomfortable. And I realized something. This isn't getting any better. I am struggling with this. Yet I can't back out now. What do I do? So I rang her up. I said, I am so scared. How do you do this? How do I do this? How does it get easier? And she said two very important things to me that day, which I remember now every time I turn that camera on and go live, every time I do a podcast episode with you, my amazing listener, or every time I get on stage. And it's this. First of all, you are there to serve one person in that room, one person on that podcast, one person on that Facebook Live or on your page. You aren't there to serve the many. And so that for me was really important to remember. I am not here to impress everyone in the room. There's one person that needs to hear one thing from me today, and that's all I'm here for. And as long as I do that and I give my best, that's all I can hope to do. But then she said something else really important to me. She started with a question. She said, Sam, what are you most afraid of? And I said, well, I'm afraid of what people think of me. I'm afraid that people will question what I'm teaching. I'm afraid that when I get off that stage, they'll think, well, that was a waste of time. I didn't learn anything new. Who does she think she is? And this person said to me something very important that day. She said, Sam, you have to remember, it's none of your business what other people think of you. You can't change it, and it doesn't matter. And I realized this goes back to that woman in the back of that room. What they're speaking is their truth. It's not yours. Only you know what that is. And I realized I actually can't please everyone in the room. Every time I hear another speaker, I will hear conflicting messages. One person loves them and another person doesn't. Why will I be any different? Why on earth should I expect for every person in that room or every person who listens to my podcast to come out the other side going, wow, that was amazing? And why should I care more about the one than the many? For every one person that complains, I was taught this many years ago, for every one person that sends a complaint into a business, there are 10 who absolutely love the service and said nothing at all. Remember that the one doesn't represent the many, guys. So you need to show up because there is someone out there right now waiting to hear from you. The last thing she said to me was actually probably the most important. And she says the fact that you're scared is actually really critical. She said, if you ever go to get on stage or hit go live or record a podcast episode and you don't feel just a little bit nervous, she said it means you've lost the care and you need to stop turning that camera on or getting on that stage. The fact that you feel nervous means you care about doing a good job and serving the people you're there to serve. So being nervous, actually a good thing. You just have to learn how to manage those nerves a little bit. I want to really encourage you as you show up with your business on social media or in person. Your journey and your story, your personality is actually critical to the success of your business because it's actually what people are connecting to. You've got a powerful ripple effect to have. I want you to think about this for a little moment. If one person signs up as a team member for you, as a customer, or becomes a client for you, what about the effect that they're having on others because of you? The impact that they're having on their family. Maybe there's somebody who's simply signing up to start taking the vitamins that you provide, or they're going to be using the makeup that you sell. What happens when they put that makeup on and that person for that day feels better about themselves because of it? They then are showing up better for their kids or their husband on that one day. Where does that come from? It comes from you. You are having that impact on that person. Why are they going to buy the makeup or why are they going to invest in the vitamins that make them a healthier, better parent or better friend or better work colleague? They're doing it because they trust you and they trust you with their health or they trust you with their skin and their beauty. They trust you with their family. They don't need to say all of these things. But you know what? You are having an amazing impact. In order to do that, though, you need to be you. So there's a few ways that you can do this. Yep. Showing up live, really powerful because it helps people to connect with you face to face. There's a reason we do this podcast as a video as well as audio recording. You can listen to me with your AirPods in or as you walk or you're in your car. But you can also watch this episode on YouTube and you can see my face. The reason that we do that is because you know this is genuinely coming from me. I also have a policy that unless it's really, really necessary, no edits happen on this podcast. You'll see an intro and an outro, and unless there's some crazy noise that goes on in the background or I sneeze halfway through, and even then sometimes we keep that in, you're not going to see an edit here. And the reason is because I want you to connect with the real version of me. I don't script my podcast. I'm talking to you from the heart. And I do that every single time because that's how I want you to show up. I want you to be the authentic, real version of you. And most importantly, I want you to share your journey and your story as much as a story of your products and your business. In fact, I want you to do it more. Again, it was a really difficult thing for me to learn to do was to share the stories that I share. every single time I get out there and I keynote speak at a conference, I will lead with a story. And I do that because I was coached to do it that way. And I know the importance and the power of doing it, but it feels so difficult to do. I was having a conversation with a really great speaker friend of mine who actually trains speakers globally. We were both speaking in the US at an event a few months ago. And she'd watched me present at an event to around about 3,000 people, not all that long before we caught up in person at the event I'm talking about now. And she said to me, I asked her honestly, I said, look, Julie, can you tell me, what did you think of the presentation that I did? Can you give me some honest, critical feedback? And I was braced. I was ready. I was ready for the negativity because, of course, that's that truth that's within myself I was waiting to hear. And she said to me, actually, Sam, it was amazing. But she said, you know, the part I loved the most? I said, what's that? And I was waiting for her to tell me actually that I spent too long at the start talking about my own journey and my story. And what she actually said was this: I loved that story you shared at the start. She said it was my favorite part and the most impactful part of your entire presentation. I said, but what about the teaching? What about the social media skills and tips I taught? She goes, that's kind of by the by. She said, what you actually shared at the very start was much more important. And she said, I watched the video of all those people in the room lean in as you shared that story. She said, without it, no one would have taken on any of the social media tips you shared later on because they wouldn't have trusted you enough to do it. The thing is that your story, your journey, is actually what helps you sell your products more than anything else can. So how do you do it in a way that's effective? You have many, many stories to share. Every day we are creating micro stories. And I got into the habit a number of years ago of starting to note in my notes on my phone micro stories, little things that happen to me through the day that I think, that could work. I actually heard my pastor say a little while ago these words, that'll preach. And that's kind of what goes through my head. When one of his kids says or does something and he can tie it into a biblical verse and turn it into a sermon, he goes, that'll preach. So for me, it was that same concept of that'll preach. I could use that. That's a little story I could share that will help me get a point across. Today, I've actually shared with you multiple stories. One of those was what I just shared then, a micro story about my pastor and how I come up with stories every single day. I could share with you many, many, many stories that I've written down now in my phone. And the reason I do it that way is because it helps it stick. Often there are things that happen to us through the day that I like to call the middle ground. When we go through life, we have the highs and lows, the ebbs and the flows. And the stories that stick out are the real highs and the real lows, the ones that we remember. And sometimes those are not the stories that you want to or feel comfortable or ready to share. But also sometimes they're not the most impactful ones either. The things that happen in the middle are actually the ones that our brain just kind of brushes off and forgets about. And so this is why journaling is really powerful to do. I picked up one of my teenage journals a couple of years ago and I was reading through it and I realized something. I used to have so much more happen in my life. And I'm sitting there reading this going, there was so much of the in-between that doesn't seem to happen anymore. I feel like my life is bipolar now. It's like up and down and high and low. But it's not true. It's just that because I was journaling it day by day back then, I was remembering the little in-betweens, those little things that happen to you through the day. The person that says something to you in the street, the observation you make, the cute thing that one of your kids says, a crazy funny story of something that happens to you. Those are the things that you forget about when you don't write them down because they are eclipsed by the massive highs and the massive lows that naturally happen in life. So start noting the little experiences, the little things, and use them as opportunities to share just a little piece of you on social media. It does not mean you have to overshare your personal life. Do not be one of those complainers, please, because people will remember not what you said, but how you made them feel. And remember, we're here to evoke trust and help them connect with us and relate. But you've got micro stories, little things you can share, even about your product and the way that you interact with them. I did a great interview with one of the very first ever consultants of Senegence, Jerry. If you haven't listened to that episode, it was a fantastic chat. But one of the things that Jerry said in that episode was they brought in a new product, which was eyelashes, the ones that you stick on. And Jerry said that she'd never, ever mastered the art of eyelashes. And she realized she had two things she could do here. She's a leader and she's promoting the product. And she thought, well, one of the things I could do here is get it right, learn how to do it perfectly, and then show up and do a live on Facebook. Or I could do that process live and I can show people the process of getting it wrong. She chose the latter. So she showed up and she taught herself to do the eyelashes on camera. Now, Jerry ended up with glue all over her face, eyelashes everywhere. But what really stood out to me was this. As she was sharing that journey, not only was she connecting and relating to people, eventually she worked it out and she was able to say to people, here's the trick, here's how you do this. Now, the thing I love about that is not only are people going to trust her now when it comes to asking questions about the eyelashes because they know she's going to give them a truthful, real answer about it, not a perfected one. But the other thing is other products. They're going to come to her and they're going to ask the question, hey, now that I know that you're real about that, can you tell me a little bit about this? And they know she's going to be honest. They know they can trust her. Because Jerry shared a little micro journey, a little micro story, an experience. She didn't make it perfect. She didn't wait till she got it right. She showed up and had some fun with it. And I really respect that and love it. And I know that you can do that too. So as I wrap this episode up, I just hope that right now, maybe I can just impact you ever so slightly when it comes to you having some courage to show up as you. Remember, this is nobody else's journey but yours. And if you want to start a business, maybe you started it many years ago, I want you to know this. You will be tested. You will come up against adversity. But the test is going to be, do you mean it? Do you really want it? Is this business really what you want to do? You've got a hope and a dream, and you are so worthy of achieving that. But the greatest test is going to be this. Do you believe in you? Because when people say something negative, the only reason it ever has an impact is because we might believe that about ourselves. When somebody says something to me that I know isn't true, I brush it off. But the moment they say something that I'm already thinking, that's already part my truth, it hits hard. And I want you to remember this. You believing in yourself and your journey is the journey. You've got this, but show up because there are people out there waiting to hear from you. They're waiting to see you. So when you use social media, you will have the most success when you show up. Not the product, not the company, not the business, not the service. You. It doesn't mean it's everything. Yeah, the product has a place, the business has a place, the company has a place. But you are the bit that holds it all together. You're the glue. So show up because people are waiting to hear from you. You're worth it. You have everything you ever needed right there in front of you right now. And ask yourself this question. What are some of the things that people used to say about me when I was growing up? What are some of the things that people used to give me a hard time about, even tease me about? Could they actually be skills? Were people identifying things about me that made me stand out and unique and powerful in this world? Something to think about. Anyway, I hope you can show up today, maybe even do a live off the back of this podcast episode. I know you've got this, and I believe in you more than you might believe in yourself right now. Surround yourself by people who believe in where you're going, but remember, this is your journey, and the only person who was ever created to walk that path was you. So when other people don't see it or believe in it, like your family, it was never their job. It was never their journey. It's yours. You've got this. You're amazing. And I know you're going to do incredible things. Thanks for tuning into this episode. It's been so great chatting with you. And we look forward to seeing you on the podcast again next week. Don't forget to subscribe. And of course, if there is somebody who you think needs to hear this message, please share this episode with them. The more impact we can have, the more we are stepping into our mission as well. And we'd love your help with that. Have an amazing day. Sending you loads of love. We'll see you again next week. Bye for now. Thank you for joining us in this episode of the Direct Selling Accelerator podcast. If you love listening and you found that this was helpful for your direct selling business, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also check out the recommended video that's popped up on your screen right here. I look forward to seeing you again next time. Bye for now.